Hi everyone, this is Steve Barrett, PR Week. Welcome Facebook Livers to our weekly podcast. Thanks for joining us. Got a great show ahead of us today. We've got Beth Cooper, new influencer, Chrissy Beth. Welcome Beth, it's great to have you on the show, and our first new influencer actually. So a real honour for us to have you with us, and looking forward to chatting with you. We've got the man himself, Frank Washcook, news editor extraordinaire. How you doing, Frank?
Doing well, thanks.
Living the dream?
I am.
Good, always. So yeah, we're going to start recording very shortly. If you've got any comments, questions, append them to this. Alison Kansky is behind the dials. She may or may not appear during the podcast as well. And we will get going.
That's my stomach. we can edit that part, that's cool.
Right, Frank's stomach intervenes there.
I'm hungry, I'm sorry.
We'll start again soon. Don't be alarmed by my quite loud opening, by the way.
All right. Good morning.
Yes, some people...
I liked Frank's open.
that was a first. That was a first. Okay, ready to go. Hello and welcome to the PR Week, PR Week's regular weekly roundup of everything that matters in the worlds of communications and PR. My name's Steve Barrett, I'm the Editor-in-Chief of PR Week. Going to guide you gently through a 20-25 minute show. I think that's the optimum length for a podcast. So we had a debate about that earlier in PR Week Towers, but welcome your thoughts on that actually. What length of podcast do you like listening to? What's the ideal length for you? And we've got a fantastic guest this week. We've got Chrissy Beth, new influencer, Chrissy Beth Cooper. How you doing, Beth?
I'm doing great. Thank you so much for having me.
That's a pleasure to have you on the show. You're our first new influencer guest.
I saw that.
So we're very excited about that and looking forward to finding out what your content is about and how you engage with brands. And we've got news editor Frank Washcook's here. How you doing, Frank?
I'm well, thanks for having me on this week.
It's an absolute pleasure and looking forward to your input as well. So as well as talking to Chrissy Beth, we'll talk about the Tinder couple. They're off to Hawaii, Frank. Interesting story there. We'll talk about GE Healthcare. They've done an interesting thing with video whereby they're releasing it a minute per day. A slightly different way to roll something out. Another favourite influencer of all of us, I think. Is that right, Chrissy Beth? Jake Paul. He's been annoying his neighbours. So what does that say about the influencer community? Or
the West Hollywood community.
Well, yeah, okay, yeah, maybe. A new role for Rachel Whetstone and holding company earnings. Not as exciting as Tinder, but still interesting. So let's get into it, Chrissy Beth. First of all, tell us about your influencer platform. What's your content about? How many followers have you got? What sort of channels do you specialise in?
Sure, I do all of them.
All of them, all of the above.
Yeah, I'm a bit of a social media addict. My handle is @ChrissyBeth across basically everything. I would say my big account is
That's
on...
Chrissy Beth with an I.
Yeah, CRISSIBETH.
Okay.
And so I would say Instagram is where I'm most active. A photographer, and that sort of translated well to Instagram being such a very visual platform.
You got about 65,000 followers there, I think.
I do.
That's very impressive.
Thank you.
And that is a great platform that seems to be growing exponentially. So do you see that as a big future playground, if you like, for content?
Yes, I definitely do. I'm excited how Amazon Spark is going to play out with all of this influencer marketing that's really been targeted at Instagram. And I don't know if you've seen that platform.
I haven't, actually. Have you seen that, Frank?
No, I haven't yet.
Okay, well, that's a good new tip. Tell us about Amazon Spark.
Well, I've just signed up, but it is rewarding my many years of Amazon shopping. I was a reviewer on Amazon, so I'm starting out in like the top 20,000 on in my ranking on Spark out of like 54 million Prime users. So I'm really excited that happened. But it's very similar to Instagram in terms of you post a square visual picture or product, you write a caption, and talking about transparency, they're the first social platform I've seen that is just very open about the fact that we're selling to you.
Right.
So it'll be interesting to see how Instagram sort of interacts with this Amazon
Sure.
thing.
Is it me, or is Amazon just trying to take over the world?
I believe it is.
Yeah, it looks like it, doesn't it?
I'm not fighting it.
No, I mean, they host our web servers. They just bought our local supermarket, Whole Foods. They've launched in Amazon Spark, but that's another topic. What sort of content are you doing? What's it all about? It's New York related, isn't it? A lot of it, and style and that sort of stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, you've just summed it up. I call it New York lifestyle, and I focus on a lot of arts and culture and architecture of like the beautiful new buildings that are going up. And I've been a photographer only in the past, but recently I've also shifted toward video because I think video is where it's going.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
What sort of length of video is optimum for the type of content you're doing?
I definitely do under a minute.
Okay.
Yeah.
And that's on Instagram and...
I do Instagram, and I also post them on YouTube, and I post them natively on Facebook and sometimes Twitter as well.
Okay, it's great. Well, be sure to check out Beth's content. What about working with brands? Tell us a bit about that, because obviously that's the bit that we interface with most, and influencers are more and more important for brands getting through to getting their messages over. So tell us a bit about how you've worked with brands.
Well, I think everybody wants to work with a brand now. That's sort of the thing. And I get the question a lot, like, well, how do you get into it? Because it's appealing. At the onset, you get free stuff, and that's always fun. And then
do you get paid as well, or is it?
Yes,
right.
Well, that's the dream, right?
Sure.
So the first one is free, where they just want you to promote their product or company, and maybe they'll invite you to an event. And they don't really give you anything, maybe an experience, but then you post on your social channels.
Okay.
And then sort of the next stage up then is like a deal. You're getting product for a post or something like that, or like maybe a free hotel stay or something.
Mm-hmm.
And so then you reach the next level, and that's good. And then sort of after that comes actual paid, like legitimate, you're signing a contract, working at the brand stuff.
So how do you message that? What stage do you start putting on your post? I got paid for this, or full transparency. I got a free stay, or I was given some free stuff. How do you deal with all that?
As soon as there is a material relationship, you need to be disclosing it. And so, material relationship just means would I be influenced in any way?
In what you write or how you present.
Yeah, exactly. So technically, I guess probably at the free level, you probably don't have to do much of anything, like you were invited to their event or something. It's not really sponsored. The next level, if you get something free, I would say even if it's a low-cost item, you should probably be putting out there, I got this product for free or something. The FTC wants you to clearly and conspicuously disclose the relationship. Yeah. And of course, they would love for everybody to write exactly what that relationship is, and then hashtag sponsored above the fold. So, but as you know, that's...
Yeah, it's difficult, especially on somewhere like Twitter, where you've only got 140 characters or something like that.
Right. And that's why people are doing like hashtag SP or hashtag thanks, but that's,
You see, Frank, if you compare that to journalism, I mean, we get free stuff. We sometimes get taken to events, and I guess we don't always actually disclose it, do we? I know on the New York Times, for example, if you get a value above $10, the reporters are not allowed to accept it. But I certainly know in B2B journalism that's a little different.
Yeah, it's obviously more accepted there. I know the AP used to have very, very stringent rules on what you could accept, what you couldn't. For instance, like if you could at one point accept, and I'm just pulling a figure out of the air here, but it was something like you could accept a lunch if it was under $10 or something like that. Hard to believe, right? No, New York anyway. Yeah, I think everybody has different rules on it. It's fair to say.
Yeah, but I think sometimes the journalistic community can get a bit pompous about this, can't they? Yeah. When actually, I'm not sure they're always adhering to as high standards as you guys are supposed to.
Supposed to, right?
Yeah. Well, that brings us on to it. I mean, not everyone is sticking to the rules, and the FTC came out recently, didn't they? Slap on the wrist for certain people, mostly with the surname Kardashian. But what do you think about that, and how do you choose the brands you're going to work with? Because presumably you're not going to accept money from any brand.
Right.
How do you make those decisions on what brands fit with you, with your brand, if you like?
Right. Well, and that's exactly it. It sort of has to fit with your persona. It has to come from a place of authenticity, or else people are not going to believe that you're really endorsing this brand. They want to believe it's something that you like and you use, and that's why you're telling them about it. So you have to do things that fit in with your brand and your lifestyle.
What if a brand offered you a big bunch of money to do something that
here's
didn't
the thing.
fit with your lifestyle?
I haven't turned down Bud Light before. I'm not a beer drinker.
Okay. So you have turned brands away.
Oh yeah, I've turned a lot of brands away, but that was the biggest one I've turned away.
Okay, interesting. But sometimes you get the impression that influencers will take money.
Yeah, well,
You
and
know.
sometimes it's a matter of you can't even fault people. They're trying to do this full time. They're freelancing. That check's going to keep their lights on.
Yeah.
So there is that same. I don't know if I would call it pompous, like you said, in the journalistic community, but there is this notion that you can sell out, and then your posts are really not looked at through the same.
Yeah,
lens.
and you lose your audience.
Yeah,
Yeah.
you lose that reputation.
Yeah.
So why would you say no to a brand like Bud Light?
I don't drink beer. If
Okay.
you look through my feed, there's like if a can of beer just showed up in it, you know, you would.
It just wouldn't feel
It
right.
would not fit. There's no feed fit. So yeah, martini with Grey Goose in it. If you're watching, that would fit.
Fair enough. Fair enough.
No, that makes sense. But tell us a bit about influencers and how they've developed and why, you know, it's really cutting out mainstream media, isn't it? And young people especially seem to pay a lot of attention to influencers. Tell us a bit about that.
That's true. Yeah, there's this distrust of brands, which fits in with your transparency theme. And I guess the younger people identify, they want to accept this influence from people that they can relate to, that they identify with. And so I did take a couple of stats down for you if you want to.
Yes, we love stats, don't we, Frank?
Well, and you can consider the source as well. It says 70% of teen YouTubers relate to the people they subscribe to over celebrities. So celebrity endorsements aren't even being as highly valued.
Okay, that's interesting.
86% of women turn to social media before purchasing. I know that's very true for me. And 71% of consumers are more likely to make a purchase based on a social media reference. And
Where are these stats from?
this is from A-List Frontline Marketing.
Okay.
So I got this off the interweb, so it's probably true.
Well, they're most things are on the interweb, aren't they? Yeah. But yeah, it's a good point. I mean, so really, it's people like you that you take influence from rather than, say, a TV advert.
Well, it's like you trust your friends, right?
Yeah.
Like you trust your friends over a commercial that you saw on TV.
Yeah.
And so when people are making these social connections, it feels like they're your friends, even if you haven't met them in person. So you're much more willing to trust their opinion than some sort of mass marketed message.
Yeah. And what are young people and people like your audience, what's their view on advertising? How do
We
they
hate it, right? We don't have 5 seconds to watch your commercial.
Right. So you're actively blocking out ads.
Yes.
You probably don't even own a TV, or you.
I have a TV like screen, but I don't have cable. I don't watch TV shows. I watch Netflix.
Yeah.
You know, and I don't like ads on anything. I have YouTube Red, so I don't have to watch any ads there.
Okay.
So.
And what about media? Do young people trust the media? Do they still utilize media content? Is that still important to them?
I guess it depends on how it's delivered to them. I mean, things like Skim got really big because it gives you, like, probably we're going to talk about later, those bite-sized chunks of very easily digestible information that you can just get on the go. So it's probably you get your news from social media, you get Twitter, you get quick headline updates, things like
Does
that.
it matter where the source is, though? I mean, you'll see a headline. Does it matter to you that it comes from the New York Times or the Skim or from something you probably don't even recognise?
Right, yeah, definitely, I think so. And each media outlet built its own sort of reputation and brand also, right? Like the New York Times, people think is a little bit more left-leaning. Fox News has got its own brand. And so I think you definitely consider the source when you're reading the news, and some have a very high level of credibility, and so you probably place more credence on those.
Okay, so media brands have still got a
Yes.
place,
Yeah.
and that there are brands like Vice Media or Mike, Refinery 29.
Right.
growing up that maybe you have a more of a connection with than the more mainstream or established media brands?
Well, some of even the more established media brands, they're delivering it to you over social media, and so
Sure,
they've
yeah,
sort of
yeah.
kept up with those times.
Yeah, it's not
PR
one or the
Week
other,
does
yeah,
it,
yeah.
They're publishing everything digitally.
And what about magazines? You know, you would have got a lot of the content, the type of content you do, or from fashion magazines or
Yes.
women's magazines. Are they still? I mean, they're still pretty thick.
Yes, I still have a subscription to Vogue, but it's the only one.
Right, right.
So,
And what makes you sort of stick with that one and maybe not some of the others?
the photography concepts, they're all high concept, beautiful photos. I like the fashion, so. That
And
one.
do you ever think about whether the content in there is influenced by the advertising? I mean,
Well, Vogue has always been a book of ads, right?
Yeah.
That's.
and is the advertising in Vogue attractive to you? Would you read? Do you
Yeah, they've
read the
always
ads?
done. Well, you don't even have to read them. It's all pictures. They're beautiful,
Yeah.
and so I think they actually had this concept, maybe even prior to Instagram and all of that. It's their, they focus on the visual appeal, and you know it's a company that hired that photographer, that concepted that photo shoot, but you're still willing to look at it because it's so pretty.
Yeah, yeah. Okay, well, let's just finish by talking about Firefest. You know, that gave influencers a really bad name, didn't it? And though you've got these celebrity influencers like Kim Kardashian, Kourtney Kardashian, you had Kendall Jenner doing the Pepsi ad, which was a little bit tone deaf, wasn't it? What do you think of them? Because they're making, if you believe the figures quoted, they're making hundreds of thousands of dollars
Yes.
just for doing a tweet. I don't know if that's actually true. It seems crazy to me, but do you think that? Well, first, what do you think of it, and what sort of image does that give of influencers?
Right. Well, and I think people like Kendall Jenner has how many millions of followers? Like over 70.
Yeah, yeah.
Someone like her's got to be a lot more careful than someone like me. But she's actually got assets that people can come after in a civil suit. And to your point with Firefest, I think that was really good to speak about in conjunction with the FTC, because you have the FTC putting out these guidelines as to basically which helps people understand what is misrepresentation or not in advertising. And so she's been named in a civil suit for materially misrepresenting Firefest.
Yeah, yeah.
And so maybe that's the way to get people to sort of sit up and listen to these guidelines.
I think you're right, because
What was your initial reaction when you saw the Firefest story unfolded? You know, as somebody who's an influencer yourself, what did you think?
You don't know how much the influencers knew about what was going on behind the scenes. I think a lot of influencers, you're not really brought into the marketing plan any more than necessary. You're given what they want your messaging to look like. You're given sort of, either you come up with the concept or they do, and you create it, and then you post, when and where you're told to post. And that's a lot of times the end of the relationship. There's really not even like a debriefing most of the time.
Should influencers be asking more questions then in that case?
Maybe somebody at her level who understands the level of influence that she has, but micro-influencers are so big now, and if you had every micro-influencer asking you a bunch of questions, it would just take a tremendous amount of time, and probably they wouldn't want to work with you. It's just, you're annoying.
Okay.
Yeah, it feels like they should take a bit more responsibility, especially if you're talking figures that high. And I mean, if you think about this actress's name has escaped me, Rachel from Friends, what was Jennifer Aniston. She pulled out of a brand advertising campaign, didn't she? Because she wasn't happy with the brand image. And I think there is a responsibility on both sides too. But of course the credibility of the brand that you're repping. Firefest was not a particularly well-known brand, was it? So
It wasn't, but they have Ja Rule and put his name on it.
yeah.
But is he really a celebrity? I mean, he was years ago.
I will neither confirm
I mean, that
or deny
was
I'm a
my
fan.
initial reason to it, was that, wow, Ja Rule was still out there doing something, right?
Ja Rule and the Violent Femmes,
Yes.
who I saw last week, much to my chagrin.
And you weren't impressed.
No, not really. But okay, well, that's an interesting topic. I think one that will run and run definitely.
Yeah.
But it's interesting to hear your point of view on it, and especially as you're you are part of the audience you serve, you know, and that's
Very true.
and it's great stuff. So let's go on to our news stories. Frank, talk us through this Tinder story.
Real
Sounds
hard news story here.
fascinating.
So there are two Kent State University students, Michelle Arendis and Josh Absek. They matched up in 2014 on Tinder, which I'm led to believe is some sort of connecting.
I believe so.
Message,
Yes,
right,
yeah, that's
activity.
how the young people meet each other these days, isn't it?
I guess. So I'm told. And they bantered back and forth for about 2.5 years with witty but lame messages about why they never got back to each other, like that really wrapped up in President's Day or midterms.
Yeah, there would be a few months between each response.
It was funny. It was good-natured. Anyway, Tinder reached out. After Josh put the message, after he tweeted the messages out, Tinder saw this as an opportunity and said, we will fly you any place for your first date. They picked Hawaii, and which is a good choice.
Who wouldn't?
Right. And so they are working out the details, and it's going to happen soon.
Okay, so it hasn't happened yet.
Anyway, here's why it's a story for us. It's part of the trend of brands and major brands bringing on everyday people as brand representatives, as influencers, to a high degree of risk in some cases. So,
Nux Carter
Right.
being another example.
Right, though, I mean, he was kind of a safe bet, you know.
Yeah.
And, you know, there was the Excedrin campaign with the upset Mets fan who could not get to
That's
the
right.
opening day game on time,
Yeah.
and things like that. So, I mean, this is more of a trend that's happening all the time. But yeah, there are risks.
In fact, we spoke to Carter, didn't we?
We
We
did.
have got a piece on Carter and Carter's
It's-
mum coming out soon.
I'm glad
Oh,
you
nice.
mentioned that. That's a good preview. Look for that Friday morning.
Friday morning,
Yeah.
okay. So what sort of due diligence do you think they do on these people? I mean, the Tinder couple has got sort of disaster.
Well, look,
potentially
I mean,
all over
I've
it,
been
haven't they?
joking. I've been joking about this, but I'm sure they've Googled them and they've looked up to see if they have criminal
They didn't say,
records
though.
and things
they
like
didn't
that,
really
right?
vet them too much. I don't know if you trust the media, but that's what the article said.
Well, yeah, I mean, if it was me, I would check to see if they
Yeah.
had a criminal record first, or if they've done anything really publicly stupid on social media. You know, I would check those
Sure.
things first.
What do you think of this, Beth? Do you think this one's got a disaster written all over it? It's a story you're going to follow, isn't it? I
Well,
mean,
and that's it. I was going to say, even if it goes terribly wrong, like you're going to get press out of
Yeah,
it. People
yeah.
want to see that. They'll watch a train wreck just as much as they'll watch a happy ending.
yeah, but is a train wreck? I suppose Tinder's the right brand for a train wreck
Take
to
that
happen.
risk.
If it was maybe Match.com or Christian Mingle, I don't know, maybe it'd be a bit different, wouldn't it? But,
That's true.
Yeah, but I mean, there are shows like Love Island's really popular in the UK at the moment.
Okay.
Blind Date back in the day. I'm sure there was similar programs on The Bachelorette, etc. So it's a sort of a variation on that, isn't it?
Sure. Well, I think what's interesting here is that in marketing now, you can't always abide by this plan that you've set up at the beginning of your fiscal year. Like they saw this go viral, they jumped on it. And I think there was like a 3-day lead time
Yeah.
between when he tweeted this message and when they started interacting with him. Like,
Yeah.
so you have to be able to
Yeah.
recognize it and then jump on it and
Mhm.
capitalize on it.
I like to think I'm immune from reality TV. Like I don't know who any of these people are. I mean, I feel like there's a new Kardashian every time I look up. And
Oh, we're
I
going to
don't
talk
know
about
who
another
any
one
of them
soon,
are.
aren't we?
But this is kind of funny, and this is interesting, and I want to see how this turns out.
Yeah. That's a great point, though, Beth, about the marketing. You used to sort of do your ad campaign, take 6 months to film it, and then roll it out for the next 3 months.
Right.
You can't do that anymore. You've got to be much more nimble as in a marketing and
True.
communications world. And through influencers like yourself and through social media, you can do some great things. Nugs Ficado turned out pretty well for Wendy's, I think. But they can also go very badly wrong, can't they? Let's quickly talk about this GE Healthcare video. Are we going to invite Alison Kanskian, our healthcare reporter, who's behind the dials? Alison, you did this story. Tell us what it was briefly. They were rolling out a video day by day, weren't they?
Yeah, so they had this 30-minute documentary about women working in healthcare in India, Indonesia, and Kenya. And it was like a day in these women's lives. And instead of just dropping the whole 30-minute video on social media, they decided to roll it out 1 minute per day over the past month. And then at the end of that, they premiered the full film on Facebook on Tuesday.
Okay.
Yeah.
And what was the target audience for this?
They were actually targeting the people in those 3 regions,
Okay.
and even like global health organizations, to kind of step up and, you know, help women like this who want to get into healthcare or provide them opportunities or training and kind of
So probably younger women.
most likely,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, so interesting. I mean, brand films, we talk about those a lot. We have our Brand Film Festival every year, which celebrates cinematic storytelling on behalf of brands. Is that going to make you more likely to want to check that out, Beth? A minute, that's an interesting technique, putting a minute up a day.
Yeah, it's interesting from both sides. I think that was a really smart way. Like you were saying, you can't spend 6 months building something and then roll it out all at once.
Yeah.
This was a way of having a half-hour piece of content and getting 30 days out of it effectively, and everybody's happy about it. So
Yeah.
that was smart from the content creation angle. And also, yeah, I probably, even if I wanted to watch it, I would say I don't have 30 minutes now, but I'd watch a minute a day, so I think that's great.
Yeah, we talked about that earlier, and you said a minute was about the right
Yeah,
length, didn't
on my
you?
YouTube channel, a minute 6 is my drop-off point.
Okay.
That's when people like to stop watching.
Yeah,
minute
yeah.
6.
And apparently we have now an attention span of 9 seconds.
I believe it.
Or is it? No, it's 8 seconds, whereas a goldfish has an attention span of 9 seconds.
Yeah.
So officially, we've got less attention than a...
My
Sorry, I've
goldfish
just
gets tired of
forgotten what I
watching
was
me
saying.
sooner than I do him.
All right, see what I did there, Frank? No, okay. But I suppose is that an idea you can only do once? I mean, or is everyone going to start doing little episodic?
No, I think that could be something that you do more of.
Yeah.
But, yeah, why not? It's a good.
Let me ask you that question about podcasts. What would the ideal length of a podcast be for you?
I heard from a very reliable source. It's about 20 to 25 minutes.
There you go. Wow. Do you know what the length of the PR Week podcast is? Yeah. Okay. All right, Frank. I know you've been busting to speak about Jake Paul.
Yeah.
Who is he, and what's he been doing?
So I think it would be most entertaining if I just read off of the top lines from DailyMail.com. So whatever that means.
Your
to
favorite
you,
website.
Whatever that means to our viewers is what it means. So Jake Paul is 20. He portrays Dirk on the Disney Channel show Bizaardvark, which is another show I'm not familiar with, but anyway. He's a YouTube star and social media influencer famed for his crazy pranks, which have included throwing a Harley Davidson in his backyard pool and setting furniture on fire. So a real man.
Sounds like a crazy kid.
A real man of talent.
Was the Harley running at the time, or was it switched off?
I don't
We should
know.
lift and
I don't
turned off
know.
Harley.
Well, I don't know. Perhaps Jake's a bit of a.
So
got his guns going. I don't know.
well, we're going to get to that. So his neighbors in West Hollywood are sick of his antics and have accused them of turning their lives into a living hell. So that sounds a little dramatic.
Or a reality show, or is that the same thing?
Paul was unrepentant, and when told locals feared he was turning the area into a quote-unquote circus, he replied, but, I mean, people like going to circuses.
Everyone likes the circus.
The millennial suddenly ran off and clambered up on top of the KTLA van. Dab, he added when he returned, pulling the 2016 cliche dance move. So I don't know what any of us have to add to any of this, but thank you to the Daily Mail for that.
That's an emotive term, millennial, isn't it?
Yeah,
the way it was used there.
It's a loaded thing nowadays, isn't it?
Beth, what do you think of that?
Yeah.
Do you think people have a certain cliched understanding of the term millennial, and that it tends to, especially older people like me, tend to group that demographic into one big homogeneous mass?
Yeah, definitely. There's a lot of negative stereotypes, I would say, where like we're always on our phones or something like that. And I know
But you
that
did just
said
say to me
negatively.
earlier you couldn't be more than 3 feet away from your phone.
So
I'm joking.
that's exactly true. But I'm saying like it's looked upon as negative by some people,
Yeah.
but to us, I think most of us are like, yeah, I need my phone. Like
Yeah.
that's just how it is. So
Do you
yeah.
accept phone calls?
No, I don't use my phone for voice calls.
Yeah. See, this is great.
I don't check voicemails.
No. So it's just. So how are you communicating? It's instant messaging, presumably. Or text.
Yeah, texting. You can get hold of me via text. Probably is the best. I'll still use emails for professional things, and then the rest is basically different social media apps, WhatsApp,
Yeah.
something like that.
What do you think of Jake Paul? Is he a good
This
influencer?
whole article is just like hashtag first world problems. Like, oh, the West Hollywood people can't enjoy their homes. So, oh, and he's got Harleys that he's throwing into pools.
Yeah.
Like,
Who
the
cares?
holding.
He has
Yeah.
8.5 million followers.
Yeah. Well,
So,
see,
good
and
for him.
I heard he shut down a street in Manhattan when he
Or
came
was that,
here.
was
so-
that his brother?
Oh, it might have been his.
I think it
brother.
was his brother.
Oh
But
God, there's
I know he's
another
got.
one.
He's got fans. I know. I'm not one of them, but yeah.
So for certain brands, it might work.
Sure.
You know,
I mean, talking about brands pairing with people, that would be a risk, I
Yeah.
think, because
Yeah.
he's.
you don't know what he's going to do.
So,
It'd
like,
be like
Frontal
pairing
lobe
with
is not
full
what's his-
disclosure, like a friend
Jackass,
of
what's his
mine's
name? Steve-O.
son, a friend of no, Steve-O is talent. But we're joking. But like a friend of mine was talking about how his son watches Dude Perfect all the time. But those guys actually have like this requires coordination and skill, and what those guys do, that's a little different.
Yeah.
Anyway,
Good point, Frank. Good
Yeah.
point.
Just
All right. Well, we could talk about this all day, actually, but we're up to nearly 25 minutes, so we need to stop. Let's quickly go through the Rachel Whetstone and the holding company earnings stories. Nowhere near as interesting, but
yeah, Rachel Whetstone, the longtime veteran of Google and then Uber for a couple of years. She recently left Uber amid all the turmoil there. She is moving over to Facebook, where she's going to be in a new position starting in September, running communications for products like Instagram and Messenger. So an interesting role for her. So
just quickly on that,
Yeah.
you're our one-woman focus group today. Uber, would you stop using a brand like Uber because of the stuff that comes out about their culture there and
Yes.
attitude to women?
But I'm like that. I can't speak on behalf of all of us. I no longer eat at Chick-fil-A. I don't shop at Hobby Lobby, and no, I'm not using Uber. So that's just me, though.
That's an interesting one-person focus group. Frank?
I don't shop at Hobby Lobby either.
No.
Well done.
Yeah,
And you run everywhere and all cycle, don't you?
that's right.
Lastly, let's quickly catch up on the holding company earnings.
Yeah, okay, so Publicis announced this morning they are up, and again, this is in general for the whole holding company at large, not just PR. Overall revenue growth 2.2% in the second quarter for Publicis. Obviously, they had a rough first quarter. If you break it down by region, it's up 3.2% in Europe compared to 0.2% in North America, so a bit slower, closer to home. 2.8% in Latin America and down 3.3% in APAC. So I think it's fair to say some mixed results still
Yeah.
from Publicis.
And Omnicom?
Not Omnicom's best quarter in terms of PR, down 0.3% organically for its firms in the second quarter, trailing every other segment there. Advertising up 4.2%, CRM up. And so in Q2 of last year, Omnicom's PR firms were up only 0.1%, so they're down on a flat quarter as well.
Yeah, okay, so that's Ketchum, Fleischmann Hiller, Porter Valley, and various other
Mark,
firms. Okay, so yeah, we've kind of been writing about that, a little bit of a slowdown, a little bit of uncertainty in the business world, and that's reflected in holding company earnings. Thank you, Frank. Thank you, Chrissy Beth. Just finally, let our listeners know how they can get in touch with you and where they can see your content.
Oh, yeah, if you just Google at Chrissy Beth, I have like the first 5 pages. So.
Okay. Check it out, and thank you so much for being our guest. Really enjoyed the show.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, it was a lot
I
of
really,
fun.
really appreciate it.
But that's all we got time for this week. We'll see you next time on the PR Week.